All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the Constant Approach video series on YouTube. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. As always, my name is JV Wins, joined here by my good friend Dogon SS. And I'm very intrigued to talk about today's topics because I think they're rather interesting. Also, interested to see what the community has to say about these various things. But before we get started, I do want to thank everybody who has been subscribing to the channel over the course of the last while. We certainly appreciate you supporting this channel over here in our little corner of YouTube. As you can see, we still have our standing goal of reaching 1,000 subscribers, and we are proverbially getting it out of the mud. So appreciate everybody for joining us and for subscribing to the channel. And if you have not subscribed to the channel and you happen to catch whim of some of this content, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit the like button if you're so inclined. Leave a comment, let us know what you think about these various issues. We certainly appreciate it, and we welcome the dialogue. Over here on Conscious Approach, we're not necessarily interested in universal agreement. That would, of course, be a cult, and we're not trying to run any of that kind of stuff. We just trying to shoot the shit and talk about some interesting stuff in the world of culture and society. So hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, let us know what you think. Now, of course, with that out of the way, we'll go ahead and get things kicked off. First thing that we are going to talk about is Dr. Umar Johnson. So if you watched our stream last week, or if you watched the standalone video that we published to the channel, Eboni K. Williams, she's a host of a show on Revolt called State of the Culture. She had Ayanla Van Zant on her show. Eboni K. Williams had Ayanla Van Zant on her State of the Culture show. And they got into a dating topic. Ayanla Van Zant is probably most notable for being a dating and relationship type sage or consultant. She writes books, and she primarily centers on the Black community. So Black relationships, Black marriages, Black families, so on and so forth. And so they got on the subject of dating and relationships. And, Eboni K. Williams started ranting about how Black men just aren't measuring up. Black men aren't doing enough. They're not doing enough to catch up. She brought up advanced degrees. She brought up income. She brought about professions. And Ayanla asked her, would you date a man if he was a bus driver? And Eboni K. Williams said, only if he was owning the bus. And so they got into this exchange back and forth, and it basically talked about warped standards and standards when it comes to dating and relationships, particularly within the Black community, that are obsolete and are in need of a revision, so to speak. Now, Dr. Umar Johnson responded to an appearance that Eboni K. Williams made on The Breakfast Club after she made her initial comments on her own show. Apparently, Eboni K. Williams tried to clean up some of what she said initially. And, Umar Johnson, wasn't disagreeing with what Eboni K. Williams had to say during her cleanup, but he definitely was taking her to task for her initial comments on her Revolt TV show when she basically denigrated working class Black men. Now, this is something that is not new to anybody who is up on game when it comes to listening to dating and relationship podcasts. You don't even really have to listen to dating and relationship podcasts or expose yourself to that kind of content specifically with Black people. This is a type of mentality that is becoming widespread across cultures and races, where there is negative association with being working class, particularly if you're a man. It's just simply inadequate. It's not good enough for a woman for you to be a man who's working class. But because we're such a small Black people are such a small percentage of the population, these issues are further exacerbated because you're dealing with a sample size in which these issues represent a more disproportionate amount of the people who have that kind of mentality. So before we get into how we feel about these various issues, I'm going to go ahead and play about a 3-minute clip of what Dr. Umar Johnson had to say in response to Eboni Williams' initial comments. And it definitely is in typical Umar Johnson fashion. So if you are familiar with Umar Johnson, the tenor and the tone of what he had to say towards Eboni K. Williams is very much so on brand. So we will play about 3 minutes or so of what Umar had to say. We won't do the whole clip. And then we'll, of course, delve into our thoughts on what he had to say.
But dear Ebony, that's not what you was talking, sweetheart. That's not what you was talking. You was on some talented 10th bullshit, and you tried to take it back to the community this morning, sister. See, we can't talk out both sides of our mouth. We can't talk out both sides of our mouth, sister. We can't talk out both sides of our mouth. I didn't disagree with much of what you said today, but that's not what you said the other day, sister. You was talking down to working class blacks. You are a bourgeoisie. You are a bourgeoisie feminist, and I hope to God you wasn't engaged to a white man, because I thought somebody said you was engaged to a white man. Ebony, I better not find out your ass was swimming in the milk. If I find out your ass was swimming in the milk, I'm gonna lose a lot of respect for you, sister. Because what that tells me, if you were with a damn Neanderthal snow puppy, then you're telling me at the end of the day, you are trying to condemn black men to justify dating white. If you are an interracial dater, if you are a bunny hopper, then what you are telling me is your whole diatribe, your whole rant against black men driving the bus was a justification so you can date a white man. I hope that ain't the case. I hope that ain't. You spoke well today, my sister. You still didn't deal with collective work and responsibility, though. I still heard a lot of Eurocentric individualism. I still heard a lot of Eurocentric individualism. And I don't know where you've been getting your reports from, sweetheart, but we got 2 million Africans with college degrees unemployed. We got 2 million Africans with college degrees unemployed because you was doing a whole lot of pushing college. You was doing a whole lot of pushing college today, like it's some form of upward mobility. I'm sorry, Sister Eboni K. Williams. College is not an opportunity for 21st century Africans. College is not an opportunity for 21st century Africans. It's putting us into debt to the banks, my sister Eboni K. Williams. So where is your solution for collective group economics? I didn't hear none of that. All I heard was European, Eurocentric, pull yourself up by your bootstraps individualism. That's all the hell I heard this morning. I wish I was there. I wish I was there. I wish I was at the Breakfast Club today with Eboni K. Williams. I had a few comments and questions for my sister. Oh, yes. No disrespect. I love my sister. I love my sister. Don't get me wrong now. She said some good things today, but she departed from the original narrative she was pushing on our working class Africans the other day. She departed from her attack on black males with blue collar jobs. Eboni K. Williams, do you know that you got plumbers who make more money than doctors? Eboni K. Williams, do you know you got carpenters who make more money than surgeons? Eboni K. Williams, do you know you got chefs who make more money than engineers? You got plumbers who make more money than architects. I think you got to go look at your census data, my sister. You got to go look at your census data, my sister. You got to go look at your census data a little bit better, because I heard a whole lot of Eurocentric, pull yourself up by your bootstraps individualism. I didn't hear a single group solution on that conversation today from Sister Ebony. I didn't hear a single group solution.
Now, the thoughts and views of Dr. Umar Johnson is just that of Dr. Umar Johnson, especially that part where he mentioned Neanderthal snow stuff. It's like we disavow all of those statements. So, but yes, you can carry on, sir.
That's his narrative, though. He's on brand, man. He never deviates from what he never deviates from the way that he likes to phrase certain things. But yeah, man, I wanted to let that ride out, particularly until that end part, because that was the crux of my contention with Eboni K. Williams last week. But be that as it may, that was his retort So, what did you think about what he had to say?
Uh, I mean, I feel like, as you mentioned, it's on brand. Now here's my take on Umar. First of all, I believe he does great satire. He mimics that of somebody who's really a revolutionary, but he just spends most of his time in hotel rooms in sketchy locations and just walking around using public Wi-Fi to do to do lives. People still donate to his causes. I don't know what fruits have come of those labors, but they still donate. And so I enjoy his shtick. I find it very humorous. So whenever he goes around and starts spewing rhetoric, um, I get tickled by it because he speaks a certain language that people who want to see change agree with. So he speaks that game well. The clip was about 3 minutes long, but it would have only been a minute and a half if he didn't repeat everything he said all the time. So I don't know what kind of speech impediment that is, or if that's some tactical mind game that he plays with his viewers so he can loop them in with some type of weird hypnosis. In any event, I still find him humorous as a person, but his criticism of Ebony is of course spot on, because then she started talking some I wish we had that clip, but she talking about some, oh nah, I'm talking I'm talking about building up black families. And then she was basically saying that people that were hating on what she was saying is white supremacy. I'm like, what are you talking about? So for her to just even throw white supremacy into this topic to begin with was ridiculous. But she was trying to spin it, of course. But she gave her initial thought answer. And her thought answer was what she was really thinking. And it was just like word association, and if a therapist was talking to you. And you say, hey, what do you think about, when you see the color blue? Boobs. What? What do you think about, when you think of the color red? Boobs. So it's just like, okay, well, this person clearly only thinks about sex. So same situation here, just a word association. Just say, hey, how do you feel about this? And she just said, nah, I need status on top
Mm-hmm.
of finances. And that has nothing to do about building the community. So yeah, she was talking out of both sides of her neck. Umar called her out on it, and I got a good laugh out of it. So how about you, sir? How do you feel about Dr. Umar? Do you feel like he's reaching here? Or do you think Miss Ebony actually has um, the right message here about building the community through her message?
Is white supremacy must be like a in case of emergency break open glass.
Yeah, it's
It's like whenever somebody has talked themselves into a corner,
mm-hmm.
um, they can just be like, "Oh, white supremacy," and it'll just brainwash everybody to be like, "Oh yeah, she has a point," because it must be white supremacy. Because when in doubt, just blame white supremacy on everything. I don't. I need to go and watch her Breakfast Club appearance. I did not see that.
Mm-hmm.
But according to Umar Johnson, she was definitely trying to walk it back. But I think that she made herself sound even worse because she brought up other things that women like her tend
Mm-hmm.
to use as a crutch to make themselves sound reasonable. If anybody wants to go back to last week where we talked about this, my central point wasn't about a woman saying that I need a man to bring in my income, because that's fine. My central point was you're using income to make yourself sound reasonable when really what you're looking for is a particular type of status. And we in the West have attached a certain amount of cachet to certain forms of work when it comes to men specifically. And whenever women talk about income, it's BS. What they're really talking about is status. What is it that you do? Not that you're bringing in the money. And the reason why I wanted to play that whole clip out is because towards the end, Umar hit the nail on the head for me when he talked about college being a mode by which black people are going into debt, number one, and I'm living proof of this. And number two, how you have carpenters and, I think last week I mentioned bricklayers, he mentioned plumbers, people like this, people who do construction, people who work in civil engineering but aren't necessarily engineers, people who dive and lay pipes and stuff like that, things that you don't necessarily need a degree for, or things that don't necessarily sound sexy on paper. These people, so long as you put in the work and and you have the tenure, are making 20 percentile money. Women like Ebony K. Williams would find those men to be inadequate because they're laying bricks and concrete and pipes underwater and fixing toilets. And that is inadequate. And it has nothing. And at that point, you're exposing yourself as someone who cares not about income, but about status. But you're lying to make yourself sound reasonable because you want to bring up income. So when Umar brought up the part at the end about plumbers making more than doctors or whatever he said, and chefs making more than surgeons, that's a very valid point that needs to be brought up, because if it was actually about the income, it wouldn't matter to you whether this guy was a chef at Benihana. If he's making the money, which is what you claim to be prioritizing, is being able to match you or maybe even exceed you with income, then what he's doing shouldn't matter. But women like this lie. They lie to make themselves seem reasonable. And I think that Umar's points are on point, not to be redundant, as Umar likes to be.
Hmm.
But yeah, I thought that his criticism of her was definitely spot on. And, the only thing with Umar that I will say is he's devout in a lot of the stuff that he talks about. And, sometimes I agree with him, sometimes I don't. A lot of times I don't. In this particular case, I do, because I don't like this thing that we've cultivated where it is now a scarlet letter to be working class. It's ridiculous. And it's only a scarlet letter from the standpoint of a man's ability to appeal to a certain caliber of woman. It's terrible. And it's a type of message that's permeated through music mainly, but also pop culture that is supposed to target black people through its messaging specifically. So whether this was a type of message that was already festering beneath the surface, particularly within our own community, it's now widespread through the music and various other forms of media. And as you and I often talk about on this channel, you can minimize the impact of music and movies and media. But nevertheless, the presence of it is so profound that if you're exposed to it enough, the rhetoric inherent in a lot of these different mediums will normalize those messages for you and make you think that this is how I ought to operate in my normal life. So now, because you listen to enough music and you watch enough of these movies and streaming shows, even if you're a black woman, you may very well think that a guy who is working class is simply not good enough for you. And it can be a guy, and that's been my theory this entire time. I've seen guys who make, I brought up last week the average median American salary is like 44,000 a year, something like that. There's guys out here who are into construction. Maybe they drive a food truck. A lot of people are doing the food truck thing. Stuff like this, plumbing, you need to know, you need to be educated in order to be an electrician. But stuff like that is still working class. And women simply find it not good enough. And it's because of nothing but what they've been conditioned to believe from everything that they expose themselves to every day, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, you name it. They think that they're supposed to be with this real estate mogul, a guy who's a hedge fund manager on Wall Street, a guy who does tech, a stockbroker, a lawyer who runs his own firm, a doctor who runs his own practice. This is what they believe. And so they will continue to keep themselves single, holding out for these 10 percenters, while these 10 percenters are just running roughshod on them because it's only 10% of the population. So I've been saying this stuff for a long time. This is one rare instance in which I do agree with Umar, because I do think that he has a point. I think that he's a bit of a dinosaur only from the standpoint that the woke media and left wing woke America, which includes corporations and the political sphere, they are they are committed to the idea that you build communities through interracial cooperation. That's what they're committed to. So they're committed to the idea that we end white supremacy, we end systemic racism, we end underrepresentation, we end economic disenfranchisement through interracial cooperation. And so Umar is kind of being phased out with his generation because he talks about building it up within community. And that's the type of message that I kind of see from a widespread standpoint, slowly but surely going away. I'm not necessarily saying it's right or wrong. That's just what I'm observing as what's happening. So that's the only thing about Umar is when he kicks some of that other stuff, I feel like nowadays is falling on deaf ears, but I do think that his critique of Eboni K. Williams from this standpoint was on the money.
Yeah, well, there's still a percentage. Yeah, I agree. It's becoming more of a, this level of wokeism, if you will, is not really as popular as it once was. Um, if because there's like stages to this stuff. If you're still on the Umar stage, right on. But there's people out there that know more than Umar. So go listen to them and go read their books. Because this guy just parrots a lot of talking points and he sounds good and he's just a grifter.
Has Umar written a book? Does
I
he have
don't
a
know.
book?
I don't know. And if he did,
Wonder.
I don't know what the hell it'll be about. To be honest with you, I don't really care. But this dude here, um, yeah, he's a grifter. He plays people for their money. He uses all levels of emotion, guilt, shame for more donations and stuff like that. Always mentioning his Cash App. He's got to repeat that too, of course. So, yeah, I mean, I only watch him to get laughs. So, because he does mention things, and like I said, he talks about things that make sense often. And when he's talking about it, it's like, yeah, but that's part of his grift. But so in this situation here, of course, he wants to unmute and dive in on a topic that a lot of people were talking about within the last past week. Because once we covered it, I was like, okay, cool. But throughout the week, I saw people was going in on this. So much so that she had to come out with some level of a rebuttal. But even then, it was typical thought denial, living in another realm. And so she's just speaking from her own delusionville of how some way her denying the average man or the mediocre person, because I think she said that why settle for mediocrity?
Yeah.
And why would a bus driver be mediocre still if he's a good man? And so the whole thing is that nah, man, there is a large percentage of people who have like you mentioned, from whatever they've been consuming, to believe that status is more important than a good man who cares and provides.
Yeah, and not only that, but they're so in the tank with the stuff that they've exposed themselves to that they don't even realize at this point. Like I don't, maybe Ebony does, but I feel like most of these people, because we as men, we've fallen into this trap where now we're on it too. We kind of feel like we're not good enough if we're not running our own company. And that's not to say that you shouldn't aspire to that. These are two different streams of consciousness. Is that something that you should aspire to or work towards? Develop a plan, execute it, and get to a point where that's where you've, you know, put yourself to in life? Absolutely. But there's a difference between that and the belief that you are inherently inadequate because that's not where you are. And that's the problem. And a lot of, we do it as men now because you know, we scroll through Instagram feeds all day, every day, looking at beautiful women talking about the type of man that's good enough for her. And the second, and subconsciously, when we see that and we know that we're not doing what they described, we just glean that we're not good enough. And this thing is happening, it's perpetuating upon itself constantly. And like women like her really do think, they don't even realize that when they are saying this stuff out loud, that they're talking about status. They really believe that they're talking about income. So it's gotten the thought process has become so pervasive that they don't even realize when they say he has to own the bus that they're talking about status and not income. They believe they're talking about income. So on top of the warped mentality, it's also tremendous confusion and a lot of conflation going on, which is adding to the problem.
No, factual, dude. So yeah, so her response was atypical for any woman that's in Delusionville. So Umar handing it to her, I'm here. I'm all here for it because, well, the community gave her a lashing for it
Yeah.
because because what is that? And look at what we're doing. Was that white supremacy when she asked you that question and you gave that regressive answer? Was that white supremacy? Because you're making us look bad. So you're making us look bad with your thought ass answer, and then of course, our best and our brightest, the ones that can get on TV, have that to say about marriage and
Yeah.
families.
Yeah.
And but other communities, they're going, hey, are you kidding me? Yeah, bus driver. He's a hardworking guy. You know, he has a job, doesn't he? So yeah, man. So yeah, and she people were doing all kinds of research on her, finding out that she even admitted it in the thing how she be hopping dick. So then they were basically saying how she be out here, gold diggerish, and so it's like, hey, allegedly.
Yeah.
So yeah, man. So this is she had this coming, but atypical thoughts, no accountability, just gonna run for the hills. You're somehow wrong, even though we just heard you and it's on recording.
Yeah, we
That
we misinterpreted what she meant. It's
yeah.
us. We
Then the
misinterpreted her. Yeah.
then the gaslighting comes that we're the white supremacists or some weirdos because we're lady, you're adding fuel to the fire. So I'm glad that the dialogue got opened up, and I'm glad that there's a lot of us, both male and female, getting at her for talking like this because it does make us look bad. But she is speaking from a mentality that's out here, and it is quite pervasive. And this is the
Yeah.
stuff that I try to get to people that's older than me. They're like, "Hey, man, what's going on? What's up, man?" It's like, "Hey, bro, the game has changed. This market is not what y'all grew up in. This is a different market." And so, and they're running around with mentalities like this. And so, who gives a shit if you're pulling in enough money and you're doing this and that? I can't run and brag on this. So, yeah, man, this is wild business, but it's the way of the world. But yeah, Umar got it right on this one. He got it right.
Yeah. Yeah. Shouts out to my boy Cashmere, bro. When I lived in Tallahassee, he and I used to hang out. Well, we were friends, so we hung out not just on the weekends, but on the weekends we would usually hang out, go to different places, have drinks and whatnot. And we would just always observe this kind of dynamic. And we had this running joke that it was very common to see an attractive non-black woman with a guy who looked like he worked in IT. And like we used IT as a stand-in for everyday guy. This guy he doesn't have 3 million followers on TikTok or Instagram. He isn't an entertainer. He isn't super popular. He isn't an entrepreneur running $1 million company. He's a guy who maybe has an undergrad degree and he's working class, working his way up. Does he punch into a clock? Yeah. Is that the end goal for him? Hopefully not. But at least for now, he's hitting a time clock and he's working on a job and he's doing his thing and he's earning his money.
Sure.
And we used to have this running joke that white guy who's doing that, you'll see him with a real cute girl. or any other guy, Latino guy, whatever, just non-black. And we had this running joke. Oh, she's in here with his she's in here with her IT boyfriend. And it used to happen every time. We see like these real cute white girls or these real cute Hispanic girls, and you look at their boyfriends, and it was just like regular dude, whatever. And our the joke that we used to have between ourselves and like amongst the group that we used to hang around with was, you don't really see that with black people, not in our generation or in the younger generations. Like you really won't see a black IT guy with this real cute black woman. I don't see it very often. I don't see that.
No.
Maybe I'm wrong, but we used to point it out because it was a running joke. It's hilarious. And it's because of a lot of this type of stuff. And so it just reminded me of that because it was hilarious. The white guy who's IT versus the black guy who's IT. The black guy who's IT, he might have to get with a girl who's not as cute or not as in shape. Whereas the white guys don't necessarily have to worry about that as often. That was kind of the running joke, unfortunately. It's not that we're bragging about this, it's just the state of affairs is currently constituted. But, it's disgusting. Income in college. Women like Ebony K. Williams will use both of those as a crutch to make themselves sound like they're reasonable people. Oh, does he have well, the reason why I'm doing this or dating this way is because black men don't have the degrees. Yeah, they do. Or the reason why I'm dating this or doing this way is because, black men don't make the money. Yeah, they do. You're just looking for something very specific. And you do not have to look like, you don't have to be a model, just to kind of bring it back to when you mentioned her as a thought. Just let's be very clear. You don't have to be an Instagram model or a fitness model or pose pics half naked or do OnlyFans or any of these things to be a thought. You
No.
can be a well spoken PhD
That's right.
lawyer
That's
and you're
right.
still a thought.
That's That's right. Bruh, all forms.
Yeah,
All
that's
forms.
right. Yeah. And she is definitely in line. To me, I see no difference between Ebony K. Williams and Brittany Renner. I don't. Um, they're the same to me. One just has a higher degree than the other. So,
Exactly. And one
yeah.
just opened her mouth to tell you the news. Yeah. And the other one does it for something else. But yeah, they're both the same, bro. I don't have time for this mentality. It needs to
Yeah.
go away in our community, period.
Yeah.
But
It's
it
really
won't.
bad. You can't build. Yeah.
Yeah, it won't, bro. Like for the streets makes so much sense. Just the phrase just makes so much sense. Cause growing up, dog, you remember, um, there was just a certain it was just a certain way certain women would carry themselves that they already looked like they was for the streets. We just didn't know the term. But she was just damn like how could you bring that home to your mom? Basically, behavior, way that they walk, talk, dress, act, all that stuff. And that was just like it wasn't all over the place. It was just pockets. And it was still like I still felt like there was normal people. But then now, bro, everybody's on this. Well, not everybody, but there's a large percentage of women on that for the streets ratchet mode, where it's just like, okay, but you've got to curb this whole phase. It can't run that long, So if you is gonna have a phase, all right, you're gonna have to wrap this up around 23.
Yeah.
You got a short window, and then you have to start getting to life. But all that experiencing, and I just want to experience, all this other stuff that they be running through their head. You know, about time they finish riding the carousel, then it's like okay, settle down stuff. The settle down stuff, it just happens too late. So they need to wrap up their whole phases if they gonna have one, because they gonna have them. They need to wrap it up around 23 and start getting serious. But they won't. This is what we're dealing with. Whole phases is lifelong now. We're seeing women in their 40s and 50s divorcing, just so they can get out there on the market and
Yeah.
start scrolling these dating apps. Listen, man. And this, last thing here, those dating apps is basically, because you can't call a prostitute. Women don't call prostitutes, but you can swipe right, and so and a guy's gonna go, oh, what, you giving it up for free? Nothing. And they just call shit in. This is not really male gigolos, because every man a hit. They just have to find the right swipe right, and then he comes through. And once they get a hit of that dopamine, it's a wild lifestyle, wild rabbit hole. So these women out here in their 30s, 40s, scrolling through dating apps, trying to get their groove back and stuff. This is madness, dude. So, hey, man, we're in a new world. We're dealing with new humans. Find yourself a person that thinks more traditional, a little bit more common with their sense. And yeah, man, try to find you something right, man, because this world out here it's Delusionville. It's Delusionville.
Yeah, it certainly is, man. So yeah, we still call Cap on Ebony K. Williams. She's still a modern thought. She's just a thought with a PhD or a law degree, whatever she has. She passed the bar. So she's a thought who passed the bar. Uh, and to Umar, appreciate the content, brother. Certainly appreciate that over here on the Constant Approach channel. Uh, you were right in your scathing retort to Ebony K. So from that standpoint, keep up the good fight.
Umar.